economy in the short term to try and save it from the worst of the virus. Claudio Lavanga joins us right now with more on that. And what can you tell us this morning, Claudio?
Good morning, Becky. Well, the coronavirus epidemic in Italy is really taking a toll on the economy here, which was already lagging behind compared to the rest of Europe, and it was still recovering from the recession 10 years ago. And now it is taking an impact to the point that today we saw the stock market in Milan, the FTSE MIB, dropping by 10%. Even now, I just checked it, it's about minus 9.8%. Of course, is similar to other stock markets across Europe, but certainly it is one of the worst performances out there. For now, well, the Prime Minister of Italy, Giuseppe Conte, last night, aware, of course, of the situation and how bad the impact can be on the Italian economy, said that they are planning to introduce a shock therapy in order to counteract the effect from the coronavirus to the Italian economy. The shock therapy includes, right now, something that was presented by the economy minister a couple of days ago. They said that they're going to inject at least 7.5 billion euros, that's $9 billion, into the economy in terms of investments.
The largest coronavirus lockdown in the world is happening right now in India. The country's 1.3 billion people are required to stay at home for 21 days. And just over a week in, reports of harsh police crackdowns, homeless people being left stranded, and a surge in positive coronavirus cases illustrate the difficulties the country faces in enforcing a nationwide lockdown.
Turn next tonight on this Live 2020 to Europe, to Italy, because health officials in this country are studying what they're seeing there, what they're seeing in France. We heard that from Dr. Fauci earlier. In Italy, in fact, they have more doctors and more hospital beds per capita than what we have even right here in the U.S. So we'll drill down on that as well. And tonight, the Vatican now revealing a bishop who recently met with the Pope has now tested positive. Tonight, at least 349 deaths reported in just the last 24 hours in Italy alone. The images are haunting. You've seen them. France, Spain, and Germany now locking down their countries. And ABC's James Longman tonight from London.
Italy has now had nearly 28,000 cases, with more than 2,100 deaths. And as the toll surges across the continent, Europe is now the epicenter of the COVID-19 crisis.
A day of presidential mixed signals. Attending the sailing of a Navy hospital ship bound for Manhattan, President Donald Trump said he might impose a quarantine on New York and neighboring states.
I am now considering and will make a decision very quickly, very shortly, a quarantine, because it's such a hot area of New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. We'll be announcing that one way or the other fairly soon.
Americans are marching through the streets in their thousands, demanding the lockdown be lifted, and the president is in their corner. Despite 700,000 infections, Donald Trump is calling for some states to be liberated, including Michigan, which has the fourth highest number of cases in the country.
From Florida to California, in Idaho and Michigan, protesters line the streets shoulder to shoulder to demonstrate against stay-at-home orders.
We want to go back to work.
Go to the hairdressers, get our hair done. It's time to open up.
All with the blessing of the president.
They seem to be very responsible people to me.
Donald Trump acknowledging many are his supporters and is fueling demonstrations with calls to liberate states like Corona hotspot Michigan, Minnesota, and in Virginia, also referencing gun rights.
They want to take their guns away, okay? They want to take their guns away. That's the Second Amendment.
Governors hitting back.
This is just grossly irresponsible, and it is dangerously bombastic.
The president isn't concerned about protesters spreading COVID-19.
They're congregating in ways that health experts have said they should not.
No, these are people expressing their views. I see where they are and I see the way they're working.
The death toll in the US is still growing, with additional probable corona deaths now also being added.
And I think right now we're heading at probably around 60, maybe 65,000.
Cases also rising. One mother without symptoms unknowingly infecting 17 of her 18 children in New York. Meanwhile, some governors are pushing back against Trump's reopening plan, saying they don't have enough tests to do it safely. Trump firing back on Twitter, saying the states need to step up and telling the New York governor to spend more time doing and less time complaining.
If he's sitting home watching TV, maybe he should get up and go to work.
The mayor also says he's suspending the state's open carry gun law in the city of Jackson and wants it overturned statewide. It's a move that he says he is making in the midst of a pandemic, and says he has the authority to do so. 16 WAPT Scott Simmons explains.
Many of these killings could have been avoided if we had state law that enabled us to better control the presence of firearms on our streets.
The Jackson mayor dropped that gun control bombshell over the weekend, claiming the pandemic emergency gave him the authority to suspend the state's open carry law inside the city limits. That measure was approved by state lawmakers in 2013, defining a person's rights to carry a firearm in public as long as it is in plain view. The mayor claims that protection has opened the door for more violence in the capital city.
The open carry law not only provides protection to individuals who are armed with illegal weapons, it creates an atmosphere of fear and intimidation in the community. We cannot continue to turn a blind eye to the fact that the open carry law has led to an increase in gun violence in our communities.
The NRA says what the mayor is doing is illegal. Tara Micha, the state director for the NRA, told me he is using COVID-19 as a way of pushing a gun control agenda. She went on to say, according to state law, no county or municipality can adopt an ordinance that restricts the possession or carrying of firearms and ammunition, and that includes during a natural disaster. Scott Simmons, 16, WAPT News.
Now, the mayor says his open carry suspension will end this Thursday unless he decides to extend it.
At least 15,000 people have died and hundreds of thousands have been infected by COVID-19, the respiratory virus which emerged in China late last year. In response, the European Union has shut its external borders, while rising numbers of countries like the United States have imposed travel bans.
To keep new cases from entering our shores, we will be suspending all travel from Europe to the United States for the next 30 days.
Countries like Israel and China have been ramping up the surveillance of citizens using artificial intelligence and tracking technology to help monitor the virus. It's also led to some countries like Malaysia and India to crack down on free speech, which experts say could prevent essential communication about the disease. Now digital rights experts are asking, will these controls go away after coronavirus? Or are they here to stay? Before we can explore this question, we have to look at why these controls were implemented in the first place and what they set out to achieve. Let's start with Singapore. In January, more than 100 people from around the world gathered in the 5-star Grand Hyatt Hotel for a sales conference. After they had all left, it emerged that one of the participants was infected with coronavirus. From then, it was a race against time to track the attendees who had travelled within Singapore or flown home, potentially spreading the virus to places it hadn't reached yet. In a Facebook post, the Prime Minister said the government was starting a process called contact tracing. This involves creating a log of a patient's movements and interactions in the 14 days before their admission to hospital, and tracing everyone exposed to them. Under normal circumstances, a government tracking your location for 2 weeks could be seen as a blatant breach of privacy, but proponents say it becomes necessary to combat the spread of an infectious disease. Now, these sorts of measures are nothing new. Governments around the world have been giving themselves emergency powers to deal with crises for centuries, but the exceptional measures they enact don't always go away once the crisis is over. Take income tax, for example. Modern income tax started out in Britain in 1799 during a time of national crisis, the French Revolutionary War. It was meant to help Britain pay for things like weapons and equipment. When the war ended, it was halted, but enforced again when hostilities flared up or the government was short on cash, before finally becoming permanent in the mid-1800s. Now income tax is the norm all around the world.
National security, times of crises, is one of the big exemptions, and that's where everything tends to go out of the window in order to respond to the crisis. What we're seeing with the current COVID-19 epidemic is a degree to which, as societies, we don't plan well for systemic risk. We don't plan well for collective risk. We plan for individual risk and individual benefits.
Emergency measures being taken by countries to combat coronavirus are going beyond contact tracing. In Israel, the government approved the use of tracking technology for at least 30 days to retrace the movements of infected patients. In Russia, they're using facial recognition to make sure people who have been ordered to stay at home are following these orders.
So this is our role in what is obviously a huge global crisis. And it's the immediate task for all of us in every small way we can to do what we can. At the end of it, however, I will return to this subject, which is the thing that has shocked and dismayed me most about the disease from the point of view of governance. And that is the absence of global coordination by governments. The World Health Organization has done a fantastic job, but the fact is, this is a global crisis. We are a global community when it comes to a crisis like this, and in future times, and there may well be future times where we require this, there's got to be much better structures in place to allow us to combat what is a global crisis with global efficacy. I know every country is going to do what it can for its own people. That's right and understandable. But there's a level at which, unless we work together across national boundaries,
say in a voice like thunder, "Come." I looked, and there before me was a white horse. Its rider held a bow, and he was given a crown, and he rode out as a conqueror bent on conquest.